Hi there and welcome to a new lesson. In this one we'll start off actually creating the enemy. So we're going to be doing the basic setup. So in order to do this we will need the sprites for the enemy. Remember that we are going to be having lots of sprites that are going to be able to be used, but we'll start off with just one. So I will right click here, create sprite, and I will call this one spr underscore enemy underscore 0. Okay, and then I will also need the corresponding object, so I'm going to be calling it obj enemy. Okay, exactly like this. Now inside of here the enemy object I will drag and drop the corresponding enemy, and then I will open this enemy sprites app and I will import it as well. So let me look for enemy 0. Okay, so it's this kind of animal over there, and then let me go to the game room, and first of all let me just modify quickly, then we'll get to backgrounds. Okay, but just to make the game the room to avoid being so bright, then inside of the instances layer I will drag and drop here the object, but well, it is maybe a little bit small right now, so I'm going to double click it and then I will scale it to 2. So now it is going to be much bigger, and I'll basically disable here the grid, and I will center it. Okay, the same thing that I did with the play button. Okay, once that this is done, I can actually go ahead inside of my enemy object, and first of all I want to create my initial health and my current health, so that we can decrease the health when we press in the object. So I will add here the create event, and I will declare these two variables. So we call the first one initial health, that is going to be equal to 10 initially, because this is going to be the health that initially every single enemy will have, and then we'll have the current health, that is going to be the health that the enemy currently has, and this is the value that is, for example, going to be modified if we click on it, and this should be equal to basically the initial health. So if you want here to set your initial health to, I don't know, 15, okay, then the current health will be updated as it should. Then I want to detect when I am pressing on the enemy, so as we did with the play button, I will add the left pressed event, and for the description I will write something like enemy clicked. Okay, now to handle everything in terms of this logic, I will create a new function. So basically functions allow you to store information, to store lines of code that then you can execute. And the idea, at least for the exact usage that we are going to be doing here, is the fact that we're going to be able to divide the code a little bit better, because we will have this take damage function that will only focus on actually taking the damage, but then for example we're going to have a function to change the enemy sprite. So it's like a way of having the code a little bit more separated, instead of having here dozens and dozens of lines. Okay, so you will see this even better when we start adding more functions and more code. So this is how you declare a function, okay, in the create event, and then I will call this function right here. Okay, so whenever the enemy is clicked, we are going to be referring to this function, and anything that we write here is going to be run. So let's think here for a second. When we click the enemy, what we want to happen is that we decrease our current health. So I will decrease it by 1, and then what we want to do is to check if the enemy is like death, or if we should switch up enemies or whatever. So first of all I will check if my current health is equal to 0, which means that I basically have no health left, I will restart the health, okay, because I have defeated this enemy that I was currently fighting, let's say with, and I want to switch up to a new one. Therefore, if I want to change the enemy, it should start off having full health, because well, here we were decreasing it, okay. So if this is the case, we will restart the current health, okay, and of course we will use the initial health value. Actually, here we're going to be doing even more stuff, so I will just leave an empty comment over here. So for example, here we're going to be increasing the amount of gold that we have. We are going to be changing the enemy sprites and more stuff, but well, I will just leave it like this because those are more functionalities that we will need. But what I will actually do over here is to add a show debug message when we are taking damage, and I will print here the current health, okay, so that we can see how all these values are being updated. So over here, I will start, and here I have 9. Since I have already clicked on the enemy, well, I used to have 10, then I have 9, and well, that is why I've got a 9 there, and I can continue 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then after having 1, I've got 10 again, so I can repeat this cycle. So as you can see, indeed here the cycle of the current health is working as it should, okay. Of course, we still have to draw the health bars, we still have to change the sprites and more stuff, but well, this was just the super basic setup for us to get started and for us to code even more stuff in the following lessons. So indeed, I will see you in the next one. Hi there and welcome to a new lesson. In this one, we're going to be changing the enemy sprites when we have basically killed an enemy. I will first of all start off by basically deleting this line, okay. I'm not going to be using it anymore, and I will start off creating the corresponding sprites. So I actually have already here created one sprite. So I will basically click Ctrl D one time, okay, and there I've got a copy and other one, okay. In order to also keep things organized, I will right click over here and create a new group. I will call it enemies, and I will drag and drop here all my corresponding sprites. And now I will start loading in the corresponding one. So this is the enemy 1. So here I've got the enemy 1. And this one is the enemy 2. So there I've got them. So coming back here to the code, if the enemy has run out of health and we're resetting it, and well, we should actually switch to a new enemy, I will call here a new function. I'm going to be calling it change sprites, and I will declare it over here. So it's going to be function change sprite. Okay, so this is what I was telling you about the advantages of wrapping the code around different functions, because this allows you to code a little bit more organized, because actually the logic in order to be able to change the sprite, it's not that it's going to be containing thousands of lines, but it is better to break down a complex function such as the take damage. That is like I would say the core function of all the game, and most of the code running will be inside of this function. So as the function itself has lots of different functionalities, it is better to just break the different functionalities down in different. For example, here, well, we want to change the sprites, and actually the changing of the sprites does take considerable amount of lines. Then we can just put it in a completely separate function. So in order to create our change sprite function, we firstly are going to be needing a random sprite, okay, because we want to change our sprite to some kind of random sprite that we select from the 3 that we've got. So we'll create a local variable for this random sprite, and initially it's going to be no one, okay. So this basically means an empty variable with no value that then we're going to be loading in a sprite. Now let's assign here a random value to this random sprite. In order to do this, I will make this equal to choose, and here I can provide all the sprites, okay, because basically choose will literally choose from any of the values that we provide over here randomly, okay. It will choose. So it is going to be quite simple and straightforward in order to just create our random sprite. And then we actually have to set this random sprite to be our actual and our current sprite, because this is just a variable containing a reference to any of these 3. but it isn't modifying the actual sprite. So we would do sprite index equals random sprites. Okay, sprite index basically contains the current sprite that our object has. So when we do this, also before doing this, I will just decrease here the health to something like 3 so that it is faster. 1 2 3 1 2 3, and you can see there, for example, it seems that it didn't change, but let's do, for example, 1 2 3, and now it changed. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. So what is happening is that sometimes the random sprite that is being chosen can be the same one as the sprite index that we currently have. Basically, we want to be avoiding having a repeated sprite. We always want to have a different sprite, and to do this, it is quite simple. We're going to be using a do while loop. You can actually right click over here, code snippets, and you have a do until loop, and you can here take a look at the way in which this is coded. Also, just for coherency, I will put here other enter. So in terms of the code, here you would write what you want to be doing, okay, and here until a certain condition is met. So what I want to be doing here is, okay, always keep on assigning new random sprites until they are different. So until my random sprite is different from the sprite index, okay, this symbol over here means that it isn't equal, that it isn't the same. So let's take a look at the logic again. We create a random sprites variable, and then we call here a do until loop that would do this operation over here. Basically, it would keep choosing random sprites until the random sprite is different from the sprite index. And by doing this, we would avoid having duplicated sprites. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. And well, as you can see, we can continue like this, and well, every time we will be getting different results. Okay, I'm going to actually be resetting here the initial health back to 10, just to avoid leaving the game like this. But actually, I will continue testing on, so we have to remember to set this back to 10 when we need to, because if not, the game is going to be a little bit too easy. But well, something that you may have noticed is the fact that, for example, we start with this sprite because it's the one that I'm setting over here, okay? But let's take a look at the sequence that we are getting. We get first this animal, then we get this one, then again this one, and the snake. So let's play again. We get this kind of blue creature, we get this animal again, and then we get a snake. So the sequence is always the same one, even though we are randomizing them. The thing is that the sprites that are here being chosen are always being chosen in the same order. So we also have to randomize how everything is being randomly chosen, okay? However, instead of doing this a little bit on a hurry, because well, the process, it is quite simple itself, but we're going to be requiring to create a complete new object that is going to be a manager object, because well, these kinds of global functions that are going to be affecting the game from end to end, because if we randomize how the numbers are being chosen randomly, it will affect the project from side to side. So the method that we have to use, basically good practice, is to have it inside of a manager object. And manager objects basically exist in order to have a global reference to anything that we want to be having, or to also calling functions that are going to somehow be affecting more than one object, that can actually affect a whole room, for example. But anyway, as this is a more complex topic, we are going to be discussing it separately in the following lesson. So I will see you there. Hi there, and welcome to a new lesson. In this one, we're going to be discussing manager objects because they have multiple purposes, such as, for example, randomizing how things are being chosen randomly. By the way, it may be a little confusing, but well, we get here firstly this enemy, then we get this one, then this one again, and the snake. So even if we play in different game sessions, as you can see, we're always getting the exact same result. So we have to avoid this, and we're going to basically be creating a manager object, because randomizing, okay, these decisions, let's say, is something that will affect the game from end to end. So instead of calling it like here in the player, because not only will this affect the player, but any other object and any other instance that we have inside of the room, that is the reason why we will do it in a completely separate object. And also, besides randomizing this, we'll also have global variables. Okay, so global variables are going to be variables that, for example, they don't belong here to the enemy object or to any other object that we may have. They basically have a global reference that you can call quite easily, access its value, and modify. This is super useful for example, game over conditions, and for storing other variables that are going to be used in different places in the game. Because, well, right now in the game we don't have much objects, okay, and it is also quite a small project. But in bigger projects where you have dozens of objects, having a global variable that you can access in any of them, it is something that you can actually take advantage of. So this is even better and easier to understand if we just put this to the practice. So inside of the objects, I will right click, create, and object, okay, and here I will name it obj manager. As simple as that, we have our manager created as any other object. Now, there isn't anything special that we have to do in this manager script for it to work. So usually all these things are created in the creates event. So the function, in order to randomize how our enemy sprites are being chosen, is basically randomize, okay. So basically this is called the seed. So basically every time it will generate a new random seed. So this will allow us to actually have in different game sessions different results. So now we get this one, now this one, and this one again, and the snake, okay. But for example, if now we go to the game room and I'm going to basically drag and drop it anywhere, it doesn't matter since it has no collision, no sprite. So we had that sequence, and now we are getting the snake, then this one again, and the blue one. So now we're getting the brown, green, blue, green. Okay, so you can see that indeed the results that you are going to be getting in different game sessions are going to be always not equal to the previous one, okay. So this is quite useful, okay. Now also, taking advantage of the fact that we are dedicating a complete lesson towards creating this manager, I will also start off declaring a global variable that you declare by using global dot followed by the variable name, in this case enemies killed. Initially it's going to be 0 because when the game starts, the enemies that we have killed are basically 0. So why are we creating here a global reference if we could actually just determine in the enemy when we are killing here the enemy? We could say here, okay, we could create a variable as we created here and say, okay, increase that variable. The thing is that then we're going to be changing, well, we are changing the sprites, we are changing in the soon the backgrounds. So basically, to avoid having here more variables than needed, and also due to the fact that this is something that then it is going to be used to determine the amount of gold that we have, because the more enemies that we have killed, the more gold we are going to be having. And it is a variable that is not only going to be limited to the enemy. In this case, yes, it is only going to be limited to the enemy because it is a small project. But in bigger projects, this is actually a variable that contains like an analytic, some data that is important for the overall game logic, okay? this isn't something like, for example, here in the enemy, it is the health, okay? And we don't really care about the health here because we are just here decreasing it and doing some calculations. But on the other hand, the enemies killed is an analytic from the game. The amount of enemies that you have killed, if the game is sober or not. All these things that are related to the game state, okay, are always just put in a manager script because it is easier to access them instead of having them here directly in a certain object, okay? You could still create them here as an object variable as current health or initial health. You could do it definitely, but well, this is just a pretty good practice for even bigger projects. And now with this, well, we have finished with the manager object, and we will continue with the, let's say, with the actual game, okay, adding more and more stuff in the following lesson. So I will see you there. Hi there and welcome to a new lesson. In this one, we are going to be changing the background, okay? So to begin with this, we of course, first of all, need to have the different sprites as we did with our enemies, but well, in this time in the background, okay, for the backgrounds, okay? So as I'm going to be having different sprites, I will start off by creating a new group, basically a new folder, backgrounds, okay? And well, here I will have in this case a total of 5 backgrounds, okay? I'm duplicating them with Ctrl D, and I will drag and drop all of them inside of the corresponding folder. Now let's get to importing them. So this is background 1, background 1, there we have it. And well, we can continue like this with the other ones. So background 2, background 3, and finally we've got background 4. And now we actually have to change the background. It's going to be quite similar to what we had in the logic of changing the sprite, because we also want to make sure that the background that we are changing is always different from the last one. It's going to be similar, not the exact same process. So I will go ahead and over here I will add this new function. Once again, as it is a functionality that will require me to write some lines, okay, let's say something like 10 lines. I'm going to be having this in a completely different function to keep things organized. Change background. I was going to name it like this. As we have in our sprite, I want to firstly have a random background that is going to be no one. Okay, then I'm going to be assigning a value. And I also want to have here a last background, okay? Like this. Because well, here in order to access the current sprite of the layer, the line itself, it is a little bit more complicated and longer, so I'm just going to be storing here a direct reference to the last background. So here the process is going to be quite similar. I will do a do until loop, so I will write do something until a certain condition is reached. So in this case, what I'm going to be doing is random background, okay, is going to be equal to choose. And here, well, we have to write all the different backgrounds. So background 0, background 1, background 2, background 3, and background 4. And we want to continue doing this until random background is different from the last background, okay? Now we have to update the current background. So to do this, you would do layer background sprite. So what you would do is you first need the ID of the layer background. So to do this, you would call layer background get ID, and here you would write the name of the layer that, as you can see, is just background. So here you are getting the background layer, and after doing this, you are going to be setting the sprite to basically random backgrounds. Okay, so like this, we are updating the last background, and then we want to store which is our last background. So last background is going to be the random background that we had just set in the line of above. Now the next thing that we have to think about is when do we want to be changing the background. And in this case, what we want to do is every 5 enemies that we kill, we want to be updating the background. So in order to do this, I will update over here the global.enemies killed global variable, actually, that I created, and I will increase it by 1, okay, because here I have killed an enemy, therefore this variable should be set as well. So here, after changing the sprites, I will check, okay, if the global enemies killed is equal to 5, which means that I have killed 5 enemies, I want to reset the variable, okay, to be back to 0. And then after this, I want to change the background. So what is happening over here is that initially our enemies killed is 0, okay, as we have defined in the manager. So it's going to start at 0. We will kill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When we reach 5 enemies killed, we will reset this variable and we will change the background. So the next execution, global enemies killed will be 0, then it's going to be increased to 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5. It will reach 5. It will be reset once again, and it will change the background once again. So the process is going to be quite easy to follow along. So here I can play, okay, and also yes, we have to load in the background. So I want to start off by having the background 1, for example, okay. So also here in the enemy, we have to make sure that, well, the last background that was used is actually the background 1, okay. And I'm using this background because, well, in the menu, remember that we were using background, and in this case it was the background 0. So here, just to change things a little bit, and so we're having a repeated background, I am setting this to be background 1, okay. So now I am starting with this background and this enemy. I want to kill 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there I've got it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I am in a new background. Well, all the time I'm going to be in different backgrounds. So we have a total of 5. So it's going to be actually not difficult, but well, we would need to be playing here for a considerable amount of time in order to be able to go through all of them. But well, as you can see, eventually I think that this one we hadn't seen it before, and I don't think we have any left in order to see. Maybe the one that was a little bit darker, but let's see if we are fortunate enough to see it. The one that was like kind of this one, okay, yes, darker, I said, but yeah, basically because it contains gray colors, the other ones are a little bit more colorful. So well, yes, indeed, with this we are now able to take damage, to change the sprites of the enemy, and even more to change the backgrounds, okay. So now the game does start to have a little bit more shape, but well, of course we still have to add more and more things, and we will continue with them in our next lesson.